expected to be filled with disgust when I walked into his room, but after he opened the door and drew me in an embrace, I felt pity instead. Heart-rending pity, so melancholic I was stifling a cry as he groped my breast, tugged at my panties and his groin, crushing against mine. My dress was discarded in minutes, and his pants and shirts were off in seconds. We stumbled onto the bed. He wanted me to be on top. I tried to sleep underneath, to stare at the ceiling while he did his business. But he pled, his voice hoarse as he carried me onto his stomach, his waist thrusting upwards, his hands gripping my waist as his penis sought entrance. He exhaled. I shut my eyes and tried to count 200. He jerked in frenzy. His hands were everywhere, his waist thrusting and wriggling. I stared at the bedpost, willing my mind to concentrate on counting. Instead, Papa's lean face hovered over me. He was in pain. He was crying. He was Edward. I began to cry. Edward mistook it for pleasure. He balked and tightened his grip on my waist. His eyes shut so tight, and then it was over. I got off him and ran to the toilet. My name is Ukamaka OLISAKWE. I'm from Nigeria. I'm a novelist, a short story writer, an essayist, and also a screenwriter. I think the best thing is that we have over 240 dialects and ethnicities, so many cultures, so many things to inspire me. I never run short of inspirational things to write about because we have so much more to talk about. The worst thing is that I have to deal with the fact that we have this succession of governments that do not support literary activities, do not support creativity, and I think that's one of the most difficult things for a writer in Nigeria. It's a place where you learn to be hopeful. Even though we have this high rate of poverty, you never run out of hope. You don't give up. It's like when you give up, you're giving up on your community. And you know, we are this tightly knit, close-knit community kind of people. So we don't ever give up. Okay, the most beautiful part for me, recently, I learned how to write longhand, with a pen and a book, because it enables me opportunity to process my thoughts, pen it down, and then after I'm done, I have to transport to my laptop. So for some people, it looks quite tedious, but I think it's most easier for me because I get to process my thoughts really well. I'm not so good with technology. And the most difficult part is having to edit. No, so innovating. Of course, yes, I think so. Even though so many writers don't want to be burdened with that public duty, responsibility sort of thing, I think you owe the community you write about the duty to be truthful, to be honest about your writing, and it can be quite a burden because you have to represent them as truthful as possible and not strip them of their dignity when you write. So, yes, I think you have a duty as a writer to do that. Absolutely. I will take my country for example. We have this government who are so engrossed into supporting the entertainment industry. The past governments at the point plunged in millions of dollars supporting the movie industry and all that, and even the music industry, but none goes to the literary industry. And a community stands the risk of losing its best resource, its best people, creative people, to other communities where they get support, because a writer always needs support, financial support, and if they get it elsewhere, you lose your own work, you lose your own people to the outsider who support them. And then for those people who stay back, who don't get that support, there's always this risk of churning out mediocre works. So yeah, so for the state, yes, the state should support literary projects, and through, like in my country, we have just one residency program owned by a writer, which is so sad. So the way the state, like my country, should help is by collaborating with universities and institutions and colleges to run residency programs for writers. So most of us don't keep going abroad for residencies. They can also support, maybe set up an agency that will fund literary works and documentaries and other forms of artistic expressions. Yes, it's a speech actually by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, the speech "We Should All Be Feminists." When she gave that talk at the TEDx Houston in London, it was so controversial that it sparked this major debate in my country about feminism. Oh, we in my country, we have this idea that feminism is kind of enabling women to usurp men, and all that. So, and recently, and after she gave that talk and Beyonce featured it in her music video Flawless, it became a global sort of campaign. In fact, she was the one that kind of made Beyonce a feminist. And then recently she wrote a 9,000 word piece about also how to raise a girl feminist, and all boils down to we should all be feminist. What it did for me is this. Before listening to her speech, I always was this writer who was too careful about how I represent women in my stories. I had to twist and make my women so that they don't betray society's expectation of women. They must be moral, they must be this, they must be that. And many times it's not truthful. It doesn't represent the reality I live in, I see. But after listening to that speech, I didn't give a damn anymore. I had to tell the stories. Yes, women also have extramarital affairs, and I had to tell it. Before then, I was too scared that people would read it and they'll be like, oh, are you sure you're not writing about yourself, that sort of thing. But after listening to that speech, it kind of set me free, and I just tell the story as truthful as those experiences, those things we see when we were growing up and we're not allowed to question. But reading and watching Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's speech kind of gave me that strength to do that. Before I left for Nigeria on August 19, I told my children, even before I got my visa, when I got a letter from Iowa that I should come here for the 10-week program, I told my children, I have 3 kids. One is 14, she's a girl, Chidima. The second one is 12, she's Chisom, a girl also. And the last one is a boy, he's 9 years old, Chukwubuike. So I told them I was going to Iowa City and I'm going to, that's what they asked me, so what are you going there to do? I said, okay, I'm going there to write. And I said, okay, so what are you going to write about? I said, I'm going to complete a full length of work, a novel, my first, a new draft. So when I was leaving, they gave me this letter. The 3 of them kind of teamed up, and they wrote a letter and reminding me to not forget my target, to make sure that when I get back home by December, that I will have that completed work of fiction. So when I got here, here is so there's this calm, this sense of place about Iowa City that made it so comfortable for me, and I had to keep their letter on my desktop. So every day I look at that letter and I remember, oh, these children will be waiting for me, when I get back to Nigeria. So where is that thing you came back with? So I write every day. So this is like the best experience for me as a writer from Nigeria, especially coming from a place where we have so many people who have stories to tell, so many creative people, but with little support. And then having a program like this, giving me this opportunity. And coming to Iowa City, what it did for me, for number one, is I had the opportunity to interrogate situation back home. When you live in a place, you don't really get to interrogate certain things. You don't even know that certain things are not normal, should not be. But after coming here and living away from home for a very long time, for weeks and all that, I had the opportunity to compare reality here and over there. And I think we have so many things to get right in my country, and I have to thank this program for that. And for me, I'm going to do my own little part by writing about them. And then the beautiful thing about this place is, I always find it difficult not writing outside of my home. But coming here, this place feels so much like home that I write every day. And I think that's one of the most victorious things for me. Into his room, but after he opened the door and drew me in an embrace, I felt pity instead. heart-rending pity, so melancholic I was stifling a cry as he groped my breast, tugged at my panties and his groin, crushing against mine. My dress was discarded in minutes, and his pants and shirts were off in seconds. We stumbled onto the bed. He wanted me to be on top. I tried to sleep underneath, to stare at the ceiling while he did his business. But he pled, his voice. To us as he carried me onto his stomach, his waist thrusting upwards, his hands gripping my waist as his penis sought entrance. He exhaled. I shut my eyes and tried to count 200. He jacked in frenzy. His hands were everywhere. I expected to be filled with disgust when I walked